guess we should get started, right? So hi everybody, I'm Mike Reiter, nice to meet you all. And I guess I'm just curious, which talks did you guys go to, just out of my curiosity? Did some people saw Rick Lavoie again? The competition one? Okay. I have no idea what he talked about, so I don't know how it's going to connect to this. But I know that the first talk, the keynote that he gave, sort of highlighted the sort of newer role of technology today, right? And how we learn and connect with others. Not that it's right with the encyclopedia, right, and the internet sort of example. I thought that was pretty cool. Do we have any gamers in the room? We do. Can I ask what games?
RPG, so like Final Fantasy, maybe.
Okay. Did I see another hand?
Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers.
Clash of Clans.
Clash of Clans. Okay, cool.
Minecraft.
Minecraft. Okay, awesome. I'm not a gamer, so you're the experts. Do you have any like self-proclaimed tech addicts? Okay. I have one more question. Has anyone heard of the theory, self-determination theory before? Has heard of that theory before? There's a popular book that came out a few years ago called Drive by Daniel Pink. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of that. I think it's like a New York Times bestseller. It talks about the theory a lot and sort of how about where motivation is now and what we understand about it. So I'm going to talk today about technology, our kids, and use that theory to help us understand it, why our kids are using technology the way they do, and what we can do about it. Oh my gosh, I'm at the back of the last time. Everyone has to like close their eyes so they don't see the whole thing. How do I do this? I'm going to click exit show, and then I'm going to click, okay, hold on. I'm not a Mac user. Oh man. Technology success.
No.
Oh! I certainly can't like stand here and be like, I know everything about technology. I can't even get a PowerPoint. If it was a PC, it'd be a different story. Okay. So Thanksgiving's coming up. Thank goodness we can get together and enjoy it. Here we have a family at the dinner table, Thanksgiving table. I'm sure no one's seen this before, right? No one's encountered this. So while we're going to be talking about technology and its use with our kids and self-determination theory, I think it's good to just sort of take a broader look at what's our goal in general, right? Our goal is to successfully launch our children and adolescents into independent, self-sufficient young adults, right? Mm-hmm. And most of our kids will achieve that goal with, some bumps along the road or a few challenges, but some of them will have some challenges along the way. And I thought maybe we could just take a look at what some of those common challenges might be. Learning differences might be one of them. So that just sort of generally refers to learning disabilities or challenges they're having in school. Executive functioning challenges, that ADHD is an example of an executive functioning challenge. Its executive functioning challenges can include other things, such as, well, I'll tell you what an executive functioning is. It's our ability to plan, organize, manage our time, impulse control, sort of your classic things that might go along with when you think of ADHD, working memory. But ADHD isn't the only example of an executive functioning challenge someone might have. It could be someone who's in a car accident, has a traumatic brain injury, might have executive functioning challenges, or someone who has Alzheimer's might be having executive functioning challenges for another reason, right? Anxiety problems could be a challenge along the way. That could be general anxiety, social anxiety, OCD, panic attacks, panic disorder, developmental delays, or a child who might fall on the autism spectrum might have some challenges. Functional life skills, that refers to things like doing your laundry or cleaning your room, cooking, knowing how to get places on public transportation, managing money. I should have changed that to say family dynamics rather than family conflict. Family conflict certainly could be a challenge along the way, but just general dynamics doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be conflict, but there could be dynamics that are going on in the family that can get in the way of our children sort of launching and taking those next steps sometimes. And reduced motivation. These aren't mutually exclusive. You can probably guess that they might overlap, they might co-occur, right? One might be happening because another thing's happening, right? So, someone with reduced motivation might be experiencing executive functioning or learning challenges. And another one is excess technology use, which we're going to talk about. But the reason I put that at the bottom is because I don't want us to think of that as the challenge or the problem here. I want us to think of that as a symptom of other things that are going on, rather than pointing the finger at that. So these are common challenges that might manifest themselves in the excess use of technology. Does that make sense? Can everybody hear me? Okay. I said no to the microphone, so then they took the entire system out of the room. So I was like, okay, I guess that's a permanent choice. So keeping this in mind, we can take a look at someone who's making an important life decision here. I'm sure we don't know anyone who would make the same choice, right? But let's take a look at what the implications of such a decision might be. So greater internet use has been linked to reduced social circle, depression, loneliness and anxiety, parent-adolescent conflict, I'm sure that hasn't happened, lower family functioning, which also includes that, and poor mental health outcomes. I'm not sure if you find anything here familiar. This is a collage of some internet and social media gaming activities. Do you see anything missing from this picture? You probably do. If you just go to Steam itself, Steam is like an online database. You can sign up for Steam. It's like the iTunes, sort of an iTunes for video games, and just by having a Steam account, you can access many of these games and hundreds more. So I want people to be able to ask me questions if you have any along the way. Okay, just raise your hand and we can make this a dialogue. So parents often ask me, how much is too much of these activities, right? How much is okay? How much screen time should my kid have? So the American Academy of Pediatrics says kids and teens should have entertainment media for no more than 1 to 2 hours a day. And that should be high quality content. Not defined like who's defining the high quality. Is it the kid or the parent? And what that is. And for infants and toddlers under 2, no, you really shouldn't have any screen time. But let's see what's really happening here. Studies show that up to 8 hours for 8 to 10-year-olds, and across the world, Europe and North America, we're looking at numbers 3 to 4 hours on average. There's this study here. This one it was in New York. A little over 3 hours for infants and toddlers. Someone asked me I just gave the same talk like 5 minutes ago. So someone asked me if these were recreational or academic uses of screen time, which is a good question. The higher numbers tend to be when they ask about screen time, including academics. The lower numbers when they're focusing more on just recreational, like gaming or just like internet use, or watching TV as well.
What about adults?
Adults, this is just pulling data for kids. Yeah, so that's a distinction I probably should make. And actually, these studies here is a big international study, and it's like 40 or 50,000 in this study gathered data. So it's a huge number. Not from each location. I think like North America was like 10,000 kids. So what are some of the effects of screen time around the world? In the U.S., the more screen time you had was related to less active play, greater obesity, China, obesity, depression, anxiety. In Canada, riskier behaviors. That might be involvement in sort of like crimes or riskier sexual behaviors. In Ireland, obesity. But there's a balance here. It's not all negative. In England, screen time, greater participation in sports was associated with better mental health regardless of screen time. And in North America, it was connected to positive peer relationships. So we can see overall that we're using technology more than the recommended amount, right? And that there's a potential for some negative effects on it, right? But what I'd like to do is take a look at this theory, intrinsic motivation, self-determination theory, to help us understand why we're using this technology as much as we are and what's going on here. So what is intrinsic motivation? So this is motivation that comes from within. This is like internal, I like to do something, I enjoy something, I'm driven to do it. I'm not doing it because someone else told me to do it, because I think society wants me to do it, because my peers are doing it. This is something like I really enjoy to do. It's true internal motivation. Here's an example of intrinsic motivation. I think this is like I interpret this as a husband working on his manuscript and his wife coming down asking him, is he done yet? And he says, finish it. Why would I want to finish it?
Yeah.
Right? So this is a guy who's doing something he enjoys, even at the potential expense of maybe achieving some of his other life goals or things that he needs to attend to, and maybe getting into a thing with his wife about it, right? She's clearly not pleased. So I think that's a good example of it. There are three basic human needs that contribute to intrinsic motivation. And those needs are characterized by the theory called self-determination theory. Okay, so self-determination theory says that the three needs that will maximize internal motivation are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Now I'm going to talk about each of these separately, explain them, and then I'm going to apply them to the use of technology. Oh, by the way, people are taking notes here. This is apparently going to be available on the website. So, I'm sorry. I should have said that before. I didn't realize that until just recently. So, I think you're going to be able to download this. So, when these three needs are enhanced and supported, intrinsic motivation is maximized. And when these needs are diminished or undermined, we are less intrinsically motivated to do something that we might want to do. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions so far? No? Okay. So let's start with autonomy. Autonomy is simply when an activity is done out of personal interest. The classic example is an infant or a child doing an activity. I found a way to sneak my kid into this presentation. This is Cameron, and you can see that he has lots of toys that people have given him and his parents have bought him, and then he has a box, right? What do you think he played with?
The box.
The box, right? He got in the box, and he got out of the box. And he got in the box, and he wanted to be pushed in the box, and he got out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the picture of where he insisted that the French Bulldog go in the box, and he pushed that. My wife told me to leave that one out. But that's certainly not what we were going for, right? This is him wanting to do it. And the idea is that as we get older, our autonomy gets reduced, right? Because other people are telling us to do things, or we should do this, or we should do that. We should go to school, we should get good grades, right? So the reasons for why we do things comes less and less from within. So the classic example is a little kid. And also what helps maximize autonomy is rewards not being used to control our behavior. That's important. So what's a good example of a science fair project?
Erupting volcano.
Oh, an erupting volcano, that's good. Okay, right. So let's say the teacher says, okay, you guys have to come up with a science fair project idea. Do that. And the kid says, I'm going to do an erupting volcano, right? Okay, so they're like, oh, this is awesome. This is exciting. I want to do an erupting volcano. And then the teacher says, oh, and you're going to get a grade for that, right? Okay, so now what's the reason for why the child's doing the erupting volcano? Well, it's an assigned project, but they picked that particular project. But now the reason to do this project has been shifted a little bit from internal, right, to external. Because now I'm being evaluated on this, right? And now I have to do it a certain way, right? And I have to think about how I'm going to do it differently potentially, right? Now let's say mom and dad say, oh, well, you know, if you get an A on that erupting volcano, we're going to give you $20 and take you to Chuck E. Cheese, right? Okay, so now it's happened. That motivation has shifted even a little further away from that child, right? So now it's coming from the parents, right? So what's the reason? Well, I do want to do it because it's really cool, and I'm still going to do it, and Dad's going to help me with it, but I still need to get a good grade on it, and my parents are giving me money, and I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese, right? Okay. So the kid does it, and he gets an A. And then he's got another science fair project, and how motivated do you think he's going to be to do that erupting volcano? What's going to happen? Well, without that $20 in a Chuck E. Cheese, right, it's going to be less appealing, right?
Right.
So when we have external rewards that are put on us when there's something that we want to do, we're internally motivated for, it can undermine our own internal motivation. Does that make sense? So having greater choice and not having outside rewards added onto it, are important. Which I know is sort of hard to swallow because in school we have sticker charts and we have, that's the model, that's how it goes. But actually the founders of self-determination theory, they're at the University of Rochester, when they are able to and a university doesn't require them, they make their classes pass-fail. So just for that reason.
Has anybody, done studies on, or is there a way to determine whether a person actually learns more when there's no grade attached to it and they're doing it simply for their own interest?
Yes, there have been hundreds of studies on it. There'll be a link. There's a self-determination theory is a theory that the first book was written in 1984-85, and it's come out of a lot of studies that have essentially demonstrated that. And it's been applied to sports, it's applied to business settings, how to motivate employees, to school. It's been recently applied to technology and video gaming, which we'll be talking about. So the answer is yes. Other questions?
You said this was if the child was motivated to do the volcano. What if the child wasn't motivated to do any science project? Just said, no, I'm not doing it. And then, you kind of have to do it because you're getting a grade, then you have to, but what happens with that?
Struggle.
Then it's a struggle. It's not Chuck E. Cheese, it's no Chuck E. Cheese unless you do it. It's a good question. I sort of want to answer, but don't because I think I might get to it later. But to not get too far ahead of myself, I think that trying to explore what their interests are, right? Because remember, Cameron's picking what he's interested in here, right? He wants to play at the box because that looks most appealing to him. So getting at what Rick Lavoie was saying in his keynote, right? That kids aren't motivated, right? There's something that motivates you, right? There's a reason why you're doing something. So what are the things that this child really loves and enjoys? And let's try to find that out, connect with your kid, learn about them, and harness that into a science fair project. Does that make sense? So trying to harness their internal motivation, rather than saying like you have to do it, and if you do, I'll give you $5 because now you know it's going to happen, right? It's just not going to be pleasant. They're not going to enjoy it, right? So the second sort of basic need that will enhance someone's internal motivation is the need of competence. So the more you feel that you're good at something, that you have skills or abilities that you've acquired, that you're challenged and you can be even more challenged, you can advance once you've acquired some skills, you could learn more skills, and that you receive positive feedback, that builds your self-esteem, right? You feel good about yourself. So if I do the volcano and I'm good at it, right, and I get feedback from people like, wow, that's a great volcano, man, that's the biggest one I've ever seen, right? You're going to feel good about it. So competence is important, and the final need is relatedness. So that's being or feeling connected to others. These guys are familiar, right? The whole show's about like friends, right? I couldn't show this to like a classroom of kids for a lot of reasons, but they wouldn't know who this is. Okay, so what I'd like to do is put this together, and let's talk about how each of these needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, connects to technology and how we can understand why our kids and us use technology the way we do through the lens of these needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each one separately, and I'm going to use an example of a social media activity and a gaming activity, okay, for each of them. So we're going to start with competence. So let's start with texting or online communication. That could be through email or a chat room or something like that, right? Need satisfaction refers to just simply that the needs, how is that need met? So how is the need of competence met? So when you're texting someone, you can feel confident, right? You are successfully sending and receiving messages. You're able to articulate your thoughts, right? This might be something that would be hard to say to someone, right? So what are they doing? They're sitting on this date and they're texting each other. Okay, you look beautiful, thank you, right? But when we're writing someone online, imagine if we were experiencing anxiety or social anxiety, or we're not sure how to face someone, or it's challenging to, have open, engage in communication or conversations. Doing it on the phone's a perfect example of being able to feel you're successful and able to talk to others, right? Okay. So how can the need for competence be met in gaming? Now, we could look at any game probably and figure this out. I'm using the example of a sports driving game, Mario Kart. Anybody played Mario Kart? It's fun. I like it. I only play with friends because it's a social thing for me. I'm not very good at it. I'm not a good gamer. I've tried. I'm not good at it. So I'm certainly not doing it for the need for competence. I probably do it because I'm with my friends who are doing it. I don't own a Wii. It's only when and this happens very rarely. So how does this need of competence get met? Well, difficulty of challenge. So in games, right, you can level up in a lot of games. So you achieve this level, then you pass on and move to the next level, right? Then the next level. So every time you do that, you feel more and more competent. You can, you get feedback from on-screen meters, from crowd roar. Here it tells you you're in first place. You have these little turtles that you can throw at other guys on the road to knock them off, and then you get into first place. It shows you where you are compared to everyone else. It's engaging. There are these feedback loops in all games that tell you how well you're doing, and without that, you wouldn't feel like you're doing that well, and you probably wouldn't play it that much more, right? But the more you get that feedback that you're good at it and you're doing well, and that you can achieve more, that you could do even better, there's more to do, the more likely you're going to find that game engaging, the more motivated you're going to be to play it. Let's talk about autonomy. So Facebook, social media. Freedom to say what you want or post. You can make your own decisions. You can friend and defriend people, right? So not only do you have the autonomy to choose Facebook, but once you're in Facebook, you can choose what you want to do in it, who you want to talk to, what you want to say, right? It's a big thing in the media, right? Like, what are the controls, right? Generally Facebook wants fewer controls, right? For people to do whatever they want on it, right? So the more freedom you have in a social media activity, the more motivated you're going to be to use it, right? Anybody heard of Minecraft?
Yeah.
How many parents have purchased Minecraft shirts for their kids? We have a few. No, it's okay. Kids come in with Minecraft shirts. I always ask them, how many do you have? It's usually like 2 or 3. So Minecraft is an example of what's called a sandbox game. And a sandbox game is a game that's essentially an open canvas. You can do whatever you want within the game. You can, it's almost open-ended. There's lots of choice. There's lots of choice in a sandbox game. Think of Minecraft as Legos on the computer. Okay, so if you had a huge box of Legos, and then you had, the little thing that you put the Legos on, they're usually green, right? You could build whatever you want, right? And then you can invite your friends to play in that little world, and then you can, create things and do all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of autonomy within the game, and the more autonomy there is within a game, the more choice you have within a game, the more choice a developer allows within a game, the more appealing it is, and the more motivated someone is to play it. Here's an example of someone, this was in the BBC, I think last month. Someone took 2 years and built a model city on Minecraft of New York City. So they didn't finish it, and they say it's not exact, but that's 4.5 million blocks. Imagine buying 4.5 million Legos for your kid, like how much that would be. But imagine that. I mean, that's unlimited. And now they could put that actual city, they're making it available for other people to play on. So you could walk around New York City now and, build other stuff on there if you want. So that's pretty cool. So the choice is really unlimited in some of these games. I said that to a kid like a couple weeks ago, sort of like unlimited, right? You can do whatever you want. And he actually corrected me. So he said, well, the world technically ends at a certain point. So like within that, you can. It's like, okay, all right. But it's virtually unlimited, right? We didn't get into it. So how is the need for relatedness met in social media? Well, Twitter, I think, is a good example. You could communicate with, where am I? You can communicate with dozens of people instantly, or feel connected to people from around the world instantly, right? With very little or no effort, right? If you're on someone's feed, right? They just sent you a message. You don't even know them. It could be like Miley Cyrus, right? And you could live in the mountains, right? Near nobody, right? You're hundreds of miles away from anybody, but you feel connected to others, right? When were we able to do this before? So how powerful is that need being met through social media? Here is Ricky Gervais. He says, I'm sorry, but I'm going to stop these tweets because I don't see the point. Please follow my blog at rickygervais.com. So I find it funny that he's substituting one social media activity for another. So let's look at how relatedness the need for relatedness can be met through gaming. This is a snapshot of Counter-Strike. I picked this one because I used to play it when I was in college. I wasn't very good at it. There's a theme here with me and games. I always wanted to get into gaming because some of my friends were into it, and then I just wasn't really good at it. So, but it's what's called a massive multiplayer online game. It's a first-person shooter, which is what it sounds like. You shoot people and they die. It's massive multiplayer games are ways you could connect with friends that you already have. You can stay connected with friends maybe if you move away to another country, your parents relocate to another city. You can still do what you're doing with them somewhere else. Or you could connect with new friends, people you may not even know, or will never know, really. But they might be a friend for you. Now you do this like over voice over IP or through Skype or something often, or if you're on Steam, you can talk to your friends. The gamer's like, yeah, that's how we do it. When I was in college and I was doing this, we would call each other, like we're in the same hall, so I'd call the guy in the room next to me and put in speakerphone, and he would call the guy in the room next to him and put in speakerphone. And we went around the whole hall and did that, right? But then we all had our speakerphones on, and since we called each other, we were linked and we could all talk about like how we were doing. So it's different now, right? It's a lot easier. So the need for relatedness. So parents often sort of say to me, and a lot of people feel that the reason why we're playing these games is because they're violent games, right? And the violence is attracting us. But the research, the self-determination theory research says, well, that may not be exactly what's going on. What's happening here is that the violent games are actually meeting our needs. So what are those needs? Well, what they actually did is they did some studies where they took Halo and Half-Life, and they dramatically changed the content of the game so they weren't violent. And then they had gamers play the violent version and the non-violent version of it, and then they asked them how much they enjoyed the games, and then they also assessed how their needs were met. And when the games were enjoyed both ways, they found that the games were equally enjoyable, in fact, sometimes more when they weren't violent, as long as the needs were met. Does that make sense? And so when you're thinking like, okay, so someone's like in this game, like in other games, when you shoot someone, you don't just sort of disappear off the screen, like, someone's head gets blown off or like it's bloody, right? It's like pretty gory, which we don't like. But what's actually happening here is that what's motivating our kids to play. Looking through this approach, those are indicators that you're doing well at the game. You're competent at it, right? So the more of those graphics that exist, it's like, wow, that was a really good kill. Like, wow, I have to get the bigger gun, right? So I can, I gotta like save my points or trade up so I can get like something else to do, like have even more impact, right? So it's more, you have to think about like what are the needs here, and it may not be a violent need, but it's more a need for competence. with that said, they also found that if someone has a personality trait that's higher in aggression, they might be more likely to play the violent games, but the violent games aren't creating that trait in that person. What questions do people have so far? No questions. Any disagreements? No, everybody's cool. Okay. So often there isn't a problem. You know, our kids are managing their time, we're managing their time, we're able to, you know, move through life smoothly. But sometimes it might be too much, right? We saw with the statistics, you know, they might be playing too much. So what do? So parents often ask, well, maybe I should just take it all away, right? Maybe I should just take the computer away, I should lock up the iPad, I should disconnect the router. No one's thought of that, right?
All the above.
All the above. Which one first?
I've locked them up in the gun closet, I've disconnected the router, yeah, I've done all that.
Right. So I get asked this question all the time, should I just take it away? And I ask the question, well, what are the needs being met with the activity? You probably saw me going there, right? Okay. And the reason for asking this question is the more you know about your child's technology, the better you'll understand how to alternatively meet their needs, right? So for example, let's say you have two kids who are playing Minecraft, and they're both playing for like 6 hours a day. They're building Titan City, okay? So one of them is building Titan City for 6 hours a day by himself. He comes home and he's just working diligently on it. He's doing a great job, and it's going to be in the BBC. And the other one is doing exactly the same thing, but they're on Titan City with their friends doing it, okay? And before they left school, they said, hey, you know, what time do you want to get on? And, you know, they like connect to get on the same server, and they're doing it together, right? So you have two kids doing the same thing. They're on Minecraft for 6 hours on Titan City, but they're actually doing different things. One is building it by themselves, and one might be playing on it with a bunch of their friends, okay? So what are the needs that are being met here? So with the first kid who's just doing it by themselves, well, maybe it's a need for competence. Maybe it's achievement, right? Wow, I'm building this thing. This is really cool, right? You know? And maybe for the other kid, it's relatedness. They wouldn't be on it unless their friends joined, right? This is how we're connecting. This is how we're going to hang out, right? So when you think about, like, how can I balance, you know, my child's life here? What else can they be doing instead of being on Minecraft? If you say, well, why don't you go out and see who's playing basketball on the court to the kid who's just building it by themselves, that might not be the right substitute, right? Maybe it's the need for competence, the need for achievement that they need. Maybe we want to, like, you know, talk about building a model rocket, or maybe we want to go to earth treks and practice rock climbing, right? You know, do something like that. But for the kid who's doing it for the need for relatedness, then we might think, oh, let's go check out to see who's playing basketball outside, or let's go to earth treks and let's invite your friends. Does that make sense? So by understanding why they're doing what they're doing, and Rick Lavoie said at the very end of his keynote, like learning from your child, then you can understand how you can meet those needs in alternative ways. Does that make sense? So I spend a lot of my time talking with adolescents, young adults about this. I'm not a gamer, but sometimes they ask me if I'm a gamer because I know the language, not all the language, but enough, because I'm trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And the more we do that, the better we can help influence them in positive ways. And then the more you connect with them, right? They're like, oh, they're really interested. And then you are more able to, you know, make a positive impact and work together as a team. So this is really like the gist of like the whole thing I'm talking about here is what are the needs, how are they impacting technology, and how can we understand them and work with our kids to get those needs met. So it's not that it's a technology addiction, right? But it's that the needs are being met in this way, and that's how it's representing. Does that make sense? Questions?
I don't know if this is going in the wrong direction, but what about the kid who's an angry child and they're playing violent video games, and it's their way of handling their anger, and then we're seeing a lot of that played out in schools, etc.?
That's a good question. I was asked the same question at the, I had to do this a little earlier, and I wish I could say that was good practice for me to answer the question. But I don't know, do people have, I won't dodge it, but I'm just curious if people have thoughts on that? Like on how this approach, thinking about it this way, could.
I mean, if a kid never owned a gun,
Mhm.
but they get to practice daily
Yeah.
for hours on
Mhm.
violent video games and shooting at targets.
Yeah.
When they get their hands on a gun,
Mhm.
they've already had a lot of practice,
Mhm.
and they've already played this out in their mind.
Right. Mhm.
And that's, as a grandparent,
Mhm.
that's a big concern to me.
Yeah.
I was thinking, just brainstorming, I mean, addressing the anger, it seems like he's trying to do the best he can, addressing his anger and expressing it, but maybe it would be a sign for help, that
Mhm.
somebody could help him more productively.
Right.
Especially if it's showing up in school, then that's gonna hurt him in his life, which he probably doesn't want.
Yeah.
You could consider getting them another way to get their aggression out, martial arts, where they do a lot of, and it is an aggressive activity, but within martial arts, they do a lot of training and a lot of discipline,
Mhm.
teaching them how to control the power that they're given.
That's very true, but that also takes a parent to be engaged with the child in their activities. What if the child's anger begins with a parent, maybe who's not there?
Right. I think the answer is probably complex and it depends on the individual kid. But this particular approach, and thinking of it this way, would not say that anger or aggression or getting that out is the issue here. It would say the issue is that there are other fundamental those three basic human needs. Maybe it's relatedness, being positively connected with others,
Mhm.
feeling like you're good at something,
Mhm.
and having choice in your life, being able to choose things that you want to do, that you enjoy, that if we focus on how we can foster that in another way to substitute maybe those video games, that would help. The research, I can't articulate it as well as them, but I will point you to some of the resources in the articles that you could read more about this, because there are peer-reviewed publications on this question, but they do make the argument based on the data that playing the games does not directly link to this kind of behavior. If it did, you'd see a lot more of it. And that it's really sensationalized in the media, and that, when we see something, we're more likely to think it's happening more than it really is. The gaming industry is bigger than Hollywood now. So there are millions of people playing a single game at a time in a given day, like World of Warcraft. I think it's like I've seen different numbers, 10 to 30 million users a day at a time. So I hear, yeah.
I was just gonna say that a lot of the, shooting games or whatnot, when they're online, it really is a bigger social thing. Like,
Right.
they're on their headsets, they're chatting with their friends as they're playing. So, I haven't done any research on this, but I feel like if there was a shooter or something, they're usually isolated. Like, even when they're playing, they're
Yeah.
not necessarily communicating when they're playing. They annoy other players.
Right.
Because they do things that are obnoxious. And so it's just, it's where they are already when they start playing those games.
Right, so that might be a more aggressive personality trait that was present, and that's what they also suggest, that that's going on. Yeah.
Yes, I'm also curious for my son, it's not the gaming as much as it is all of a sudden binge watching series of things. To the extent of, letting everything else go.
YouTube and Netflix?
And other,
YouTube, right.
other places as well. And he knows a lot more about it now than I do, but it's just sort of the connection, because it's not the social. He's like CSI Miami or whatever, he's just going on to episodes and episodes of series. Anyway, and that sort of, but yet it's to that degree of
Yes.
totally absorbing. And
Right, so how does that fit into this framework? It's a good question, I'm not totally sure I know the answer to that, but I think about how much freedom and choice we have in what media is available to us. So it's not just like 4 basic cable channels, right? It's, full network cable. It's like 800 channels on, I don't even know what they are, right? On the TV. And I don't know who subscribes to all of them.
No,
but
on online you can get to all the old episodes.
and you can get to the
or
old
all
episodes, and
there's
you, right.
websites that, I don't.
And you can access your Netflix and all the online media through the TV now, right? So the amount of choice, I wonder if that plays a role in it, thinking it through this lens. Like, wow, there's so much we could do. If there wasn't as much choice, we probably wouldn't be sitting in front of the TV as adults as well, as much as we are, right? It's like, not only can I see what, is on TV now, but I'm going to see what I saved to watch for now, right?
I have just a related question, because my child isn't into games, but is just constantly watching anime, and I'm just wondering if there's just episode after episode of anime, and if you know anything of, just the Japanese.
Yeah.
If you know anything in particular.
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
My daughter does the same thing, but she's texting her friends and they're talking about it. So it goes back to the relatedness. We tried, to take it away from her, and then she's like, but they're all gonna be talking about it Monday at lunch, and I'm not gonna know. And so
Mine's not
she wants to discuss it with them at lunch, so.
That's what I was going to ask, if they're watching, like,
It's a social thing.
It's social, right.
Mhm.
For mine, it's not social.
Okay.
For some, it could be the opposite, like a way
Okay.
to not socialize, I think, it just kind of is in a world of
Right.
that character.
Right, so I'm going to expand this a little bit beyond just like these 3 needs to maybe look at some other reasons why. Actually, well, I already did in the beginning when I was talking about like what are common challenges, which gets at that, and I don't know how that applies to your situation. But sometimes it's unclear what's going on. I don't necessarily know the answer, and I'm not going to put it in the box of like, oh, everything fits in this approach. But I think it's exploring, why someone's doing what they're doing, and it might fit within this framework, but it might fit within another framework, and I'm going to use a slightly different one. But often, like with just watching the online like YouTube videos and stuff, it could be ones that they made or their friends made. So even just like being connected, by saying, yeah, I saw your video, your Minecraft video, it sort of like helps.
Well, I can say, like, coming from somebody who does that herself, a lot of times with me, it's just there's so much going on in life, and like there's so much stimulation, so much stuff that I have to get done, that it's a way to like retreat and to just like go trance, like I don't have to do something right now, I can just escape. It's the same aspect of like going to the movies, and you can escape into a different world, but it's like it's a world that continues because it's a series. So
Also, if it's like episode by episode, because I have watched the movie before, and sometimes still do, it's like reading a good book, and you just ended an episode, and it's like, reading a good book in the middle of the chapter, and you have to keep going. They have like 13 episodes or 26, you just go straight through. It's like Netflix, you just can't stop and you can't put it down. Not good, you need the discipline, I'm just saying.
And I also think that television and series, it's so much more social now. People talk about what they're watching on TV, you have a conversation, or you're texting, and even if you aren't the one that's participating in the conversation, sometimes you see other people participating in the conversation, and you want to be part of that, and you can't be part of that unless you do it. So, you're talking about the shows you're watching, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Game of Thrones. I mean, people are having those conversations now, and I didn't do that in school. I didn't go talk about Full House. But because it wasn't such a big part of the life. It was, you avoid Facebook for 3 days after Game of Thrones comes on, so nobody spoils it for you. Like, it's a different need for watching now than it was when we were all growing up. And I think that that's something that's, you know, I'm seeing the change in my life, and they're growing up with this. So that's another piece.
One of the biggest problems that I have, even with the technology restriction that I put my daughter on, is that the school gave them Chromebooks, and everything is online, Google Classroom and everything. All right. In the beginning, it's new, it's a toy. She was attached to it at the hip. But the problem was she was supposed to be doing math or the Google Classroom, and she was playing a game. And I'm like, you're not that strong of a student where you can do two things at once. You can't play a video game and do your math. You need to just do your math. So the problem was that everything's online. Their whole classroom, all of their work. It wasn't until I went to parent-teacher conference, say for example, replacing it with something. It's like, read a book. Well, the book's online. They uploaded it online. When I went to the classroom, it's like, oh no, she has paperwork, word work that she's supposed to be doing. And for a student that has learning disabilities and has difficulty with the regular subjects, the Chromebook is just, I thought, a nightmare. You know, I've tried punishments, I've tried physically taking it away. I'm tearing my hair out because in one instance they need it for school. Like one morning she got up after a big blowout. She's doing it in the morning instead of getting dressed to go to school. And I'm just like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So that, she went to school that day without it. And then I start feeling guilty, like, oh, she's not gonna be able to keep up with her classwork, and you know, I'm a bad parent. I wound up taking it to the school because I felt so bad. You know, and I'm like, what? How do I turn this off? How do I say, just do your homework without just sitting there watching you do it? Finally, the school has said that you can shut down certain sites, and it's like, now I have to be a technology expert for your technology, even to do your homework. You know, it's just, it's out of control in my house. And this is why I'm here. I'm ready to just move to the wilderness and have no internet, you know, just no television. Maybe we should go and just be Amish.
Well, there's a TV show following that.
But that's a TV show, that's not the real Amish.
Yeah, Breaking Amish, that's what I show. I'm at that point.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of parents are. And it raises the question of how are we incorporating technology into the schools further, right? Mm-hmm. And what are the limits that are being set on it, and how are schools managing that, right? So schools make different choices. I don't know what all the schools are doing, but I hear about it from parents and the kids. But you know, some schools choose to have the computer, but you have to leave it there, or the iPad, you have to leave it at school, or you pick one up and you're not assigned one, you know, it's just like a random one, you know. So but some it's yours and you take it home and you can use it wherever, right? So it raises good questions about how do you manage that, and it puts parents in a tough position when the school's saying, look, you need to use this. So
I have that issue with my daughter as well. She's 8, and it's like on a Chromebook, you know, war here. And so I work with a teacher to put in both consequences and rewards for her if she doesn't go to those different tabs at school and at home when she's supposed to be doing her work. So far, so good. So she knows her teacher is going to take it away during school because she's not going off on the different tabs. And then she does have to suffer the consequence of not being able to use her computer to get her work done. And they want to use it because all the other kids have it. So that's a motivation right there, because she's going to be the only one sitting there without her Chromebook. And then her teacher gives her a check or a check plus each day. So she comes home with a check minus, and she doesn't get to use her Chromebook at home. But if she comes home with a check plus, then she gets reward for being able to stay focused and not go to all those different places. So far, so good.
You're
It's tempting, it's hard to have an 8-year-old not explore.
Well, I just think it's also so interesting how we're having to teach our kids at a much younger age how to modulate this technology, but it's pretty important that they learn it, because I think it's, you know, it's happening to us as adults. Like, how do we keep on task at work rather than check email, check, online shop or whatever it might be. So I think it is something we need to start teaching them the skills rather than saying like, I know I have the same urge with my kids, I just want to take it all away. But we have to know that as adults, they're definitely going to have it. And we have to give them the skills and the power to sort of know, like, it's not in my best interest to get off of this task. If I want to do well in school, I can't get sidetracked.
Right.
So kind of teaching them how tempting it is, but how we've got to learn not to do that.
Totally.
And I'm thinking maybe speaking to you, to your problem, maybe you could set a timer, maybe sit with your daughter and maybe say, well, how long do you think this assignment will take? And maybe you two can determine the length of time it may take and then set the timer so then she's got to do it because her time is going to be up if she doesn't. And I mean, you can play with the time, you can give her a little bit more time, but I think if they know that within that time frame they have to do what it is they have to do, then maybe that could be a way to help her not go off and do different things and then come back to it. Is that what she's doing? She's doing the homework and then going back and playing and then going back to the assignment?
She's doing the homework, and then you're right, minimizing that window and playing little games. Or they have
Okay.
this, I think it's called, it's not FaceTime, Hangouts.
Oh.
Yeah. So and it wouldn't be so bad if it were Hangouts and you were helping each other with the homework.
Okay.
That wouldn't be so bad. Like, I didn't get this in class today, did you get it or something like that. She's 11,
Right.
but the Hangouts are, playing with the dolls and little Monster High dolls, and they're making videos of the dolls, and oh, look at the shoes.
I see.
And it's just,
It's very
out of control.
complex. There are a lot of moving parts. Yeah.
It is, right.
So I think this still could fit within the idea that, like, the more you know about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and also using the school as, a partner in this, right? In many ways, right? There might be social consequences in school, right? That sometimes that holds more than something at home, right? Also saves the conflict at home a little bit. But the more you know about your child's use, the better you'll be able to help them, meet those needs, whatever it is, why they're using the technology, in another way, potentially. So I usually discuss parents, want to take it away, right? I say replace it, then remove. It says this isn't what I meant by play outside. They took the computer and the gaming system outside. So understand why the needs are being met. Then finding other activities to meet those needs, right? So like the example of like earth tricks, right? Like we're gonna go there to, do some rock climbing. That's gonna meet that need for competence, right? You don't have to just turn the computer off. Well, by chance, because they're spending time at earth treks, they're not spending as much time on the computer, right? So you may need to set additional limits, you may not need to, but if you take it one step at a time, this is usually what I do with parents and families, we don't always get to like having to set that extra limit or having a contract around it, so we stay away from that. Even though the urge is like, I just want to take it away, it's too much already. So it's really joining with your child more to learn more, to be able to influence, and then it's a slow process. So researching the technology they want. So when they're asking for something, I always think about research what they want, because we don't always know what it's going to be, and they don't always know what it's going to be, and it's always changing, right? So if they get an iPhone, who knows what's on the iPhone, right? Like it's going to be something different tomorrow. If they get like an Xbox or whatever it is, there's going to be a new game that comes out. So researching what the possibilities are, what that means, exploring the risks and benefits, and discussing rules and expectations up front. So understanding that things are going to be, it's a moving target and things will change. And that, this is how it's easier to talk about up front than it is after the fact, as you probably know. Some screen time considerations. I know. I wasn't tech savvy enough to be able to, it says go to bed and I'll text you a story. I meant for this to pop up later, but. So having reasonable limits around screen time. Now we talked about what are the limits in the beginning. This can vary for child to child. Some kids can manage, the screens for a period of time. One kid, child A, might be able to manage like, 2 hours and it doesn't affect their life negatively, and child B, it might be getting in the way of something, right? And that changes too, a transition from elementary to middle school to high school, suddenly there are a lot more demands going on, right? There's a greater workload or more extracurriculars, and so, we have to pick up the kids now, and the commute's longer. So things change, so having reasonable limits and understanding that what you decide now is likely going to change, and having that open communication about that, right? And that understanding. Sometimes parents consider screen time blackouts or a tech-free day, like a tech-free Sunday, tech-free Saturday. That's like for everybody, right? So it's not just them, the whole family's going to do it, right? So it's do as I do, not as I say. That's hard to do.
Yes.
This is sort of more of a personal, professional thing, but I think a lot of people suggest this, like no meals with TV. A tech-free bedroom. I always talk about, or I like to talk about, and other people do, about having the bed just for sleep, right? And it also affects our sleep cycles. If we're in bed and we have a screen in front of us, it does affect your stages of sleep. If you are going to read at night, you should be reading with it's recommended to read with a reflected light rather than the direct light, like night light. So tech-free bedrooms, and then setting the example, do as I do, right? So kids will do what you do. It's unfair if you get to do it. Yes, you're the parent, but if you do it and they can't, it's unfair. So try it, your best. Having a tech basket, a lot of families I work with do this. In fact, a lot of them have it before they come to see me, and it works great. And so that's just where everyone drops their phones at night. I know this sort of looks like Zach Morris's tech basket. I couldn't say that to a kid, like, who's Zach Morris? That cool guy. So we're talking about what are the 3 needs. So it's autonomy, competence, relatedness, and these are, if we understand how those needs are being met through technology, through gaming, through social media, we could better understand why our children are motivated to use the technology the way they are. But there might be other underlying issues that influence that or connect with it, such as executive functioning challenges, which ADHD is an example, anxiety, social anxiety, OCD. I'm going to use social anxiety as an example of this in a little more detail. Developmental delays, learning differences. So these might be some underlying issues that contribute to it. So a lot of times these things will resolve on their own, and you can manage it by yourself. You're managing things all the time on your own, but sometimes you might need a little extra help. Here's someone who went to get some professional support. Says it's internet addiction, doctor. We have him hooked up to a USB. So how could therapy or professional support help? It can help uncover the underlying issues that are going on, explore ways to rebalance a kid's needs, help foster motivation and growth, and treat the underlying issues if needed. So I do a lot of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Have people heard of that before? Stands for CBT. Cognitive is just a fancy word for how we think, and the idea is that how we think and how we act affects how we feel. So if we could change how we think and act, we could change how we feel for the better, and we could also improve our relationships with others. So is it an addiction? Someone said addiction before, right? Is this an addiction, which is not in the DSM, by the way. There's no video gaming addiction at this time. It's under consideration, but it's not in there. But even if it were in there, I'd still take this perspective. Is it an addiction or a symptom of a problem? So has anyone had a kid who, who didn't want to go to a birthday party, or was anxious about going to a birthday party like a bar bat mitzvah, or something like that, a social event? Okay. Yes, we have one. Okay. I see it a lot. So let's imagine a child who has some social anxiety, and there's an event, the birthday party, and the thought that the child's having is, no one's going to talk to me if I go. Maybe my friends aren't there. So they're going to feel anxious, right? And what are they going to do? They're going to stay home, and maybe they're going to play video games. And so we're probably looking at oh, well, this is a problem, right? They're at home gaming. But I want us to think about well, maybe this is what's going on, right? Maybe they're anxious, okay? So that's really a symptom of something else that's happening. That's a byproduct of an underlying issue. So what ends up happening is it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle where when events that might be provoking anxiety, and for this child socially, they think anxious thoughts and they feel anxious and they avoid that situation and substitute doing that with maybe, being on Facebook at home or something, or Minecraft. So what would we do about that through a CBT approach? So the idea is that if we're thinking no one's going to talk to me, we'd want to help that child learn what's called positive self-talk. So talking back to that fear or worry. So that might be helping them embrace the ideas that, well, that's actually not true. Someone will talk to me. I'm not just going to stand in the corner, right? I know good conversation openers. My mom's going to be there. Oh, I do have a friend who's there. This has happened before. I've went to birthday parties and, I've been nervous, but it's worked out. If no one talks to me and the worst case happens, then no one talks to me and the worst case happens and I'll survive and I'll go to another birthday party, right? So it's helping them be able to tell themselves it's going to be okay, which will, by chance, help them build self-esteem, right? And confidence, and they'll feel confident to go to that activity, right? So it will reduce their anxiety. So CBT, the thinking part, is we want to help them think about this in a different way. And then we want them to act differently. We'd like them to do what we call face your fears. So we don't want them to just avoid the birthday party, or if someone's afraid of heights, to avoid rock climbing, or if someone has a fear of snakes or spiders, avoid going camping with Boy Scouts in the woods, right? We want them to learn that they can tell themselves it's going to be okay. Why is it not just bad, but it's good? And we want them to face their fear. So we want to help that kid go to that birthday party. Maybe they can't do it this time, but maybe we could help them practice with a smaller group of kids at the same place. Let's get a couple friends together and hang out there. Let's go do another activity. Let's work towards a birthday party, okay? By the way, we're also telling ourselves that's going to be okay. And by doing that, by having exposure and facing your fears, you will end up rebalancing that need for relatedness. You're not just home, online, connecting to people, you're connecting to people in person. Does that make sense? And a CBT approach can be applied to lots of different things. And there might be lots of underlying issues that might be showing up as a video game problem or a technology issue. It may not be social anxiety. It could be depression. It could be an executive functioning challenge or something else. So it's really uncovering what's happening underneath, what are the needs that are being met by the alternative activity, and let's find some ways to work on all that. Questions? So we're moving away from the technology to being evil in itself, right? So there are benefits, and some of you have already mentioned that. Technology connects us with others. It is socially important. It can help scaffold those who are more isolated. So someone who might be anxious socially might only feel comfortable talking to someone online, or they might not even feel comfortable talking to someone online. They might just be too nervous to do that. So I actually encourage some of the kids and families I work with to get their kids on Facebook, to get them on Twitter, to get them on to texting. Let's have a goal of texting someone once a week or twice a week, because that's how the real world works and that's how you're going to build that need. So this can be very important. And it's how the real world works, right? When you're at work and you have a job, you have to email people, you have to communicate with them. So let's teach them how to do that in a healthy way. Thoughts, questions? We got 5 minutes, and we're on track. So what are some additional resources? Family Online Safety Institute. So these are online, remember, you don't have to write this down. I'm going to put this whole thing up on the website. So they have some neat things on their website. They have a sample parent contract if it comes up. But again, looking through the lens that I've been looking through when I do all the other things with families, I rarely get to the parent contract, except for extreme situations. If we're take it step by step and try to assess those needs, what's going on, we don't always get there. But they have a sample parent contract, videos and additional resources. Some of the gaming companies have put parent controls on the games. They don't make it very obvious. You actually have to go on the website and look on the bottom where it says terms of use. It's underneath that. So exploring that. your own, other controls. Rescue Time's a program. There are others like this where you can do a free version of it, and it sort of just tells you how you're using the technology. It sort of says how much time you're spending on this activity or that activity, and then when you pay for it, it will let you actually set restrictions for yourself or for others. Self-determination theory, if you want to read more about our basic needs, autonomy, competence, motivation, there are literally hundreds of articles on this, probably lots of books. Many of them are available on their website. You can actually just download there. A lot of them are dry because they're peer-reviewed scientific research articles, but some of them are a little more friendly. Local resources, CHAD, they have a little table up front. They have, if you go to Montgomery County chapter, there are free parent support group meetings once a month on Wednesdays, and they're really great. I know because I help coordinate them. I don't go to all of them, but there's always a facilitator there. Anxiety, ABCT, it's Association for Behavior Cognitive Therapy, so if you're concerned or about maybe someone you know who experiences anxiety, you want to learn more about it, they have great fact sheets on their website and resources. OCD, International OCD Foundation, I think, is a great resource. Autism Speaks I like. And now we've launched, right? I guess that's it. Thanks.